Good morning, friends. My name is Avinash Agarwal, and I welcome you all to Ecoholics YouTube channel. Friends, in this video, I'll be discussing with you important articles from the Mint newspaper for 13th May 2024. These articles are mostly important statements, important commentary, important opinions regarding what is happening in the Indian economy as of now. For instance, we have this challenge in front of us that we want to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047. So the first article discusses from a human development point of view that what are the kind of steps that we need to take so that we can attain our goal of being a Viksit Bharat by 2047, apart from other things that we need to do right. The second article that I'll be discussing today talks about the correlation between, let us say, the stock market performance and the performance of the Indian economy. So this is a very interesting debate which you can encounter at any point of time, that does stock market performance broadly indicate what is happening in the Indian economy in general. So that is what the second article talks about. And the third article talks about the kind of leadership lessons that India can provide to the emerging framework for governance of artificial intelligence and so on, keeping in mind India's experience of building technologies such as, let us say, UPI and the kind of digital infrastructure that India has put into place. So you can see that these are a diverse range of articles that I'm going to discuss with you, right? And again, they will have a lot of important insights, and students are recurringly asking me a common question, that how do I make notes out of these notes, right? And I always remind students that, boss, you all are not getting paid for making notes. So please make sure that you're doing this in a manner such that it is actually helpful for your examination. So how will you clear the examination? You will clear the examination by writing good answers. You will clear the examination by giving good answers, right? So what are good answers? Good answers are answers which are, let us say, replete with stats, with reports, with important references, and so on. So what I would suggest is that take your syllabus, whichever exam you are preparing for, right? And as per the syllabus points, like for instance, I'm sure in any exam in economics that you may appear for, human development must have been mentioned somewhere or the other in your syllabus. So if this first article is talking about education is crucial for India, just try to pick up, like, 1 or 2 points, absolutely value added point, the best one, right, from this particular article, from this particular discussion, and integrate into your, let us say, your note, your diary, or whatever you are having, right, for economics. Okay. So while the entire discussion will give you a framework, it will give you a thought process, it will make you conversant with viewpoints, it will make you conversant with how you are supposed to structure your answers, how you are supposed to structure your essays, etc. But when it comes to picking up something out of this, you have to be extremely selective. Pick up something which is absolutely highly value added, which can go a long way in bolstering your answer. So your theory, your teachers, your classes, your notes, they will teach you a lot about, let's say, human development. They will tell you the meaning of human development, the evolution of the concept of human development, strategies for human development, right? Pros of having human development, cons of not having human development, how you can have human development. All of these things should ideally be provided to you by your textbooks, by your notes, etc., etc. But how do you enrich that? So you enrich that by taking some good examples, good statistics, good reports, references, etc. from these articles. That is what you need to do. All right. So let us start our discussion. If there is anything that you would like to ask, please feel free to ask. One of you all mentioned that I should cover household consumption survey, one of our lectures. I will definitely do that in the upcoming lecture, right? So I'll definitely cover household consumption survey. I remember that, right? So if there is any such special requirements from my side, please feel free to ask and I will do the needful, right? So, and if I forget, then please feel free to ask again, right? It's human. Okay. So let us move ahead then. So good morning to all of you. Let us start. So India's ascent to middle income country, right, that depends upon better education, that depends upon infrastructure creation, is what Asian Development Bank chief economist Albert Park is saying, right? That if you want to become a middle income economy like a lot of other economies have become, then please focus upon education and infrastructure creation, right? Most importantly, India should remain an open economy, and India should keep tariffs low so that we can integrate our industries into the global value chain, so that we can also be a part of the global manufacturing value chain, right? That will not happen if we are unwilling to trade. That will not happen if we are shielding our sectors behind high tariff walls, is what Albert Park is saying. Because see, typically what happens is that when you keep import tariffs very high, so inputs become costlier, and when inputs become costlier, your output becomes costlier, and when your output becomes costlier, you cannot participate in the value chain because you are not competitive enough, right? So that's the basic idea that you need to keep in mind, right? Education should be priority area. We should focus upon improving the quality of education, right? Albert Park says that we should go and try and produce more and more sophisticated goods for which will require skilled labor, and this is exactly what China did very well, right? And he cites China's performance on this examination called PISA, right? You may or may not have heard of this examination called PISA. It is Program for International Student Assessment, PISA. So it's a very famous examination where approximately 75 to 80 countries participate, right? India also used to participate earlier, but then we used to rank pathetically low, and the government at that point of time, this I think is in 2012 or 2014, I don't remember, right? But we had scored very badly in the PISA examination, some 73rd rank out of 74th or something like that. And that is when government in its wisdom decided that PISA rankings don't reflect the actual quality of Indian education system, hence we will not participate in PISA. So for good 7, 8, 9 years we stopped participating in PISA. Then recently we decided that we will participate in PISA, but I don't know what happened with that, right? So the point being that, see, if your education system is really that great, if your students are really that fantastic, etc., then that should reflect in global, competitive benchmarking examinations. That's the be all and end all of everything. Okay, so let's not try to hide behind reasons, right? So he is saying that was China scored reasonably high in PISA, right? China started developing skilled labor force, started getting into more and more sophisticated goods manufacturing. So if India goes down that line, that will be good for us, right? Another very important idea that you should always keep in mind is that education policy ka outcome will be known 20 years down the line. So let's say that you create and implement an education policy today, right? So the product that will get created will take at least 15 to 20 years to get created, because a student starting today in, let us say, in nursery will take 15 years at least to come out of the education system, more, right? More than that. If you are looking at a graduate, you'll spend at least 21, 22 years in the education system, at least 15 to 16 years in the education system, right? So it will take at least 15 to 16 years for you to realize that what is it that you did in terms of policy making and implementation. How good was your policy? How good was its implementation, and so on, right? So that's why it is very important that you treat education as a long-term investment, that you keep investing in education consistently. Don't look for any results in the immediate term, but the results will become apparent to you 15 to 20 years down the line, right? So that's the kind of long-termish view that generally any educationist or anybody who understands education will ask you to take when it comes to education investment or when it comes to education policy making and so on, right? If you look at India's higher education institution, none of them were in top 100 in the latest QS World University rankings. So since these rankings have started being widely reported in India, this has been the case that typically your IIT Bombay or a Madras or a Delhi will be somewhere in the 140s or 130s or 170s or 180s, right? And we will always celebrate their ranking, and we will look at the number of Indian institutions in top 500, top 1000, etc., and probably pat ourselves on the back, right? I mean, in real terms, if you are making that fantastic a progress that we believe that we are making, at least in the education sector, right? So we should have been able to storm the top 100 rankings. Probably 5, 10, 15 institutions from India should have been in top 100 had we been doing so fantastically well that you want to believe, right? But that hasn't happened, right? So there is no point blaming the rankings, etc., and saying that they are not reflective of what's really happening, etc., because they are global benchmarking basically, right? So that's about the education part. Speaking a little bit about other sectors, like for instance, in this same article, the idea is that has been suggested that farmers should move away from water dependent farming. So your policies, subsidies and technology should be oriented in such a manner that you are able to move away from water dependent farming. Maybe you can adopt micro irrigation techniques, right? Maybe you can adopt water saving technology and so on, so that climate change associated risks and impact that you may face as a farmer we can moderate that. We can make you more resilient, right? India's infrastructure investment has been lauded rightly. It is on the right track, right? So that's fantastic. There are like 10,000 infrastructure projects worth $1,831 billion, which are executed, which are likely to be executed by 2025. So this kind of information is very, very helpful, right? So this is the information coming out of National Infrastructure Pipeline, right? That we are building out these many projects, and there is a huge multiplier effect expected out of these projects for the larger Indian economy. What do I mean by multiplier effect? So see, when you are building out infrastructure, you buy steel, you buy cement, you buy labor, you buy engineering services, you buy machinery, right? So all the firms who are producing and supplying these goods and services, right, they also start creating demand. So your cement manufacturing plant will create demand for raw material. Your steel manufacturing plant will create demand for raw material, right? Your engineering firms will make demand for human labor, etc., etc. Your machinery making firms will create demand for raw material and for human labor, etc., etc. So what happens is that you get a massive boost, right, to demand because of this kind of capital expenditure. So this kind of capital expenditure, not only does it give you a fillip in immediate demand, but it also creates your productive capacity. It enhances your so-called potential GDP. Potential GDP means the optimal amount of output that you can easily produce, right, without stoking inflation, without stoking instability, right? So if we are able to increase our potential GDP, that basically means that we are increasing our potential GDP growth rate, right? That's the basic idea that at least I understand. Okay. Apart from that, we should focus on improving the ease of doing business, keeping tariffs low. We should work closely with businesses so that we can resolve whatever their grievances are. We should try and enter the global value chain, and for that we need to have a commitment to remain open and keep the tariffs low, right? And this in this article they have given an example that you may have a comparative advantage in certain subsectors, but those subsectors may be suffering. Why? Maybe because the import tariffs are high, because of which the intermediate goods costs are high. So as a result of which that subsector may not be competitive. I mean, you can be competitive in that subsector across the entire world, but you aren't because of the fact that your intermediate goods are costing higher because of higher import tariffs, right? And this is again, as this is something that I really appreciated. He has said that research out of Chinese data, they say that companies which are using imported inputs, they tend to be having higher productivity growth. They tend to be more innovative. So if you can start citing these things in your answers, it would be really lovely on your part, right? So in India's case, what is happening is that we are focusing a lot upon petroleum products exports. Like for instance, the Jamnagar refinery of Reliance Industries Limited, it is throwing out a lot of exports for India, right? We export a lot of gold, we export a lot of gems and jewelry, right? But these are your typical traditional exports that we have been doing for like 10, 20, 30 years, right? What about manufacturing intensive exports such as electronics? So here we are lagging behind as compared to other dynamic parts of Asia, and this is where we need to buck up. This is where we need to do better, right? So these are some of the things that are coming out of this article which are important. I've shared with you. I'll make sure that I share this document with you on the app, right? Ecoholics app, and you will be able to access these documents free of cost and very easily. In case you have not downloaded the app, download, register, go into study material section, go into current affairs section, and just download the PDFs. You will not have to pay a single paisa for downloading these PDFs. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Moving ahead to a next very, very interesting article, that do stock market performance, let's say performance of the Nifty or performance of the Sensex, does it kind of reflect the economic growth of India? And the answer that will come out of this article is no, that it doesn't reflect, right? But it's not just an opinion, it's a fact, right? And the author is Chief Economist, Bank of Baroda, right? So author comes out with very brilliant facts, right, to explain why this is not going to be the case, that stock market indices are, let us say, a reflection of economic growth, right? So this is a very beautiful article. So the question that we are discussing is this over here, right? That does a rising stock index indicate that there is a broad confidence in the economy, right? And is it that a rising stock index today is a foreteller of India's economic performance tomorrow, right? And this is what we are trying to answer, right? So when we are doing this kind of an analysis, we are relying upon Nifty. What is Nifty? It is basically a basically an index comprising of 50 largest companies in India, right? So Nifty's formula, it includes 50 firms, right? So if let's say Nifty moves up by 5%, that basically means that the cumulative market value, the total market value of all of these 50 firms have moved up by 5%. Not everybody has moved up by 5%. Some may have moved up by 7%. Some may have moved up by 1%. But the average movement will be 5% in the cumulative market value of these firms. What do I mean by market value of these firms? So these firms have certain number of shares which are, let us say, available in the market, and those shares, equity shares, they have certain value. So you take the total number of shares of a particular firm issued and circulating and being traded in the market, right? You multiply that by the share price of that particular equity share, and you'll get the market value of that firm. So you come across these articles, right? That Reliance's market value has breached 1 trillion or something, right? So what is that? Total number of Reliance shares multiplied by the price of Reliance shares will give you the total market value of all the Reliance shares, right? So similarly, if you add the total market value of all the 50 shares, you will get the cumulative or the total market value of the entire index, right? So if it is going up by 5%, the index value is going up by 5%. That means that cumulative market value of all the firms, all the 50 firms has gone up by 5%. Just keep that basic thing in mind, right? But is the Indian economy is equals to these 50 firms? Answer is obviously no. In the case of Sensex, there are 30 firms, which the Sensex is tracking the market value of 30 firms. So is the Indian economy equivalent to the 30 firms on the Sensex? Answer is obviously no. Even if you look at, let us say, a Nifty 500 or a Nifty 100 or a BSE 500. Also, what is a BSE 500? It's basically an index comprising of 500 companies, right? So is the Indian economy equivalent to 500 companies? The answer is obviously no, right? Because there is a vast informal section of the Indian economy, right, which doesn't get represented in this, right? Now, those people who believe that, let's say, that stock market is the be all and end all of everything, right? What is the basis of their argument? Why do certain sections believe that stock market performance is a very important indicator of the Indian economy? Why do they believe that it's a very important indicator of what is going to happen going ahead in the Indian economy? What is the basis of their logic? So the basis of their logic is some ideas of Adam Smith, right? So there is something called as an efficient market hypothesis, right? What is efficient market hypothesis saying? It is saying that all these publicly traded equity stocks, right? So the prices of these stocks, they take into account all possible information available. They take into account economic conditions of the country. They take into account what a lot of people are feeling about the prospects of our country in a real-time basis. So the movement of stock price, it tends to kind of indicate what is likely to happen in the Indian economy in, let us say, the medium term, because it is ingesting all this information, all the sentiments, right, all the possible scenarios, right, and based upon that, this engine is basically throwing out, let us say, a price movement, and that price movement therefore should reflect how the economy is performing, right? So this is what a section of people would believe, efficient market hypothesis, that all the possible information has been ingested, right? Is this true, right? Is this true? Okay, so that is what the author is going to show, that it is not true. Like, for example, in 2015-16, economy did very well, but the Nifty declined by nearly 9%. So if the economy did really well, why did Nifty decline, right? In 2021, pandemic had caused a GDP contraction. Our GDP had actually shrunk, at least in the first quarter of 2021. But the Nifty registered the highest possible increase that it had witnessed in a decade. So what happened? Because the economy is contracting and Nifty is exploding. In 2023, GDP growth rate was 7%, not bad considering what was happening in the global economy, and there was a marginal decline in the Nifty, right? In fact, if you look at the coefficient of correlation between the performance of Nifty and the performance of Indian economy, so the coefficient of correlation is minus 0.56. So if you have studied statistics a little bit, if coefficient of correlation is negative and large, that means that they are actually going in the opposite direction, right? So this kind of a coefficient of correlation and this kind of evidence So it tells you that it is hard to argue that stock market movement, it reflects the overall growth of our economy. Negative correlation means that high growth in one variable, right, tends to go along with low growth in the other, right? So there is absolutely no evidence, at least in theory, which can tell you that Nifty's performance and economy's performance are, somehow interlinked. So what does Nifty then indicate, right? So Nifty basically, or the performance of Nifty 50 or the performance of Sensex basically indicates how those 50 companies are performing in terms of their profitability, right? That is what the next part of this article says. So when you compare Nifty's movements with, let us say, the growth in the earnings of these companies, right? So you find that there is a direct connection. You find that there is a very healthy correlation of plus 0.79. That if these 50 companies' profitability increases or improves, then there is a concomitant or even better performance given by Nifty. That's the basic idea over here, right? Another aspect is elasticity of Nifty, right? So what do I mean by elasticity of Nifty? That, the stock index, that Nifty, it tends to increase by more than a commensurate increase in net profits. So let's say that net profits of all these 50 firms, let's say that on an average it increases by 10%. Nifty will give you more than 10% rise. That is what I mean by elasticity. Just the way you have, income elasticity of demand and price elasticity of demand, right, and so on earlier, employment elasticity. Very similar concept is being applied over here. That let's say that we have an X percentage increase in the profitability of all these firms combined together, right? So are we getting a greater than X percentage jump in Nifty? And the answer is yes, that we are getting a greater than X percentage jump in Nifty. Okay, so that is what I mean by elasticity, right? So therefore, after this analysis, what can be the key takeaway? The key takeaway can be that, boss, we need to be exercising moderation, right? We need to exercise moderation when we are interpreting stock market movements, right? They definitely reflect the health of the listed firms, but they are not really explaining everything about the economy, right? So let's not jump to unsustainable conclusions. That is something which is discussed over here. The third article is written by the head of NASSCOM, right? It's a very positive article. It tells you a lot of good things that have happened in the Indian economy, right? It gives you a lot of hope that a lot of things can happen good in the Indian economy going ahead, right? So I hope that you all are there with me. If there is any doubt, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I will move ahead, right? All students who are participating, you all can type something in the chat box that will help me, become familiar with who you are, where you come from, what are the kind of exams that you all are preparing for. So do try to share something about yourselves if you can, right? Moving ahead. So India's inclusive innovation, it can shape the world's digital future, right? So like I said, the article is positive, says that the world is grappling with a variety of problems, right? But India has been experiencing remarkable transformation. Our demand is strong, our supply chains are doing well, our innovation is progressing well, right? And we have been able to digitize at scale. We have a strong startup ecosystem and an entrepreneurship ecosystem, right? The policy and the investment climate is also conducive, right? And there is basically a global optimism around India, right? So if you ever want to start positively, right, this is your template. Okay, this is your template to start positively, right? So India is a part of a variety of discussions. India is part of a variety of alliances and strategic partnerships, right? And incredible India is now becoming inevitable India. I mean, of course, there is no inevitability in your good fortune, right? It's just a a stroke of bad luck away. You never know that, but okay, no problem, right? Goldman Sachs has forecasted that India could become the world's second largest economy by 2075. Our GDP could be $52.5 trillion. So to just give you a sense, we are somewhere around $3.5 trillion now, right? So 3.5 becoming 52.5, that's like, at least 15 to 16 times kind of a jump, right? And we will be behind only China, which will be around $57 trillion. So 2075 isn't too far away. I hope to live up to 2075, right? EY is predicting that India's GDP will grow six-fold to become 26 trillion by 2047, where we will be in the 100th year of our independence, right? And so it isn't just about numbers, right? If you look at qualitatively, if you look at the inclusive digital transformation, right? So these are positive stories that are coming out of India, right? So we have 1.2 billion internet users, We have the third largest startup ecosystem. We have a $250 billion technology industry. We have 5 million plus technology workforce, right? So again, a lot of emphasis upon the importance of tech, right? So this is the kind of data that you should try to pick up out of these articles. Ready-made, right? Easy to cook, easy to serve, right? Easy to digest, right? So whenever you are talking about, let us say, the services sector of India, or whenever you are talking about industrial revolution 4.0, 5.0, etc. So this kind of a data should be a part of your arsenal. It should be a part of your policy kit, right? So India is definitely transforming itself into a young, vibrant and tech savvy digital economy. No one is being left behind, etc. Right? Then we start talking about innovation in the West, and we say that they are catering to the top of the pyramid, right? But India is building from the bottom. India is focusing on bottom of the pyramid, right? So bottom of the pyramid is very difficult. Personally, I can tell you bottom of the pyramid is very difficult, right? It is incredibly challenging. There are a lot of complexities, lot of languages, lot of cultures, lot of illiteracy, lot of lack of awareness, right? And it seems to be a mission impossible. I mean, honestly speaking, any startup that is working for creating a solution for bottom of the pyramid, hats off to them. It's very difficult, right? Because the purchasing power is not there, awareness is not there, reaching out to them in tier 2 cities and beyond, in urban areas, in rural areas, it's extremely difficult, right? It's very, very easy to build for HNIs, right? It's very easy. They are right, they are there, their numbers are small, they are visible, they are reachable, awareness, literacy, etc. Everything is high. But when you are building for the bottom of the pyramid, it's extremely challenging, right? So India has invested heavily, right, in digital public good infrastructure. We have established digital highways. We have connected the entire country, providing essential services, whether financial transfers or whether life-saving vaccines. We have not left anybody behind, absolutely anybody behind, right? The design principles are robust. There is interoperability. There is an open ecosystem. There is an inclusivity, right? There is scalability. These are important words. These are your guiding principles. Tomorrow, if you are building out an ecosystem for artificial intelligence, it should also be based on an open ecosystem. It should be inclusive. It should be scalable. It should be interoperable. The design principles should be robust, right? So the digital public goods infrastructure that we created, DPI, that should be the case study for the world, right? That how they should build inclusive technology in this age of AI. Like we left nobody behind in our country. Similarly, nobody should be left behind across the world, right? So you prioritize open ecosystems, right? You prioritize interoperability and you prioritize inclusivity right from the get-go. Because if you don't do that from get-go, then you're not going to get it, right? So AI is advancing very rapidly. It will impact almost every sector, almost every aspect of our living, right? And therefore, this kind of leadership and influence is required, right? So the point is that if you look at India's AI mission, right? So we want to create local compute capacity. We want to create data systems, models, use cases and talent, right? So we are basically democratizing AI from the very onset, right? We don't want to keep it confined to those who are highly educated, highly skilled, highly literate, highly resourceful, etc., right? So our technological prowess, right? Our success stories, the way we have harnessed technology, right? The key feature of that is that we have been able to keep it inclusive for the larger part, or we try to keep it inclusive for the larger part. That is something that we need to think about. So we don't need to obsess necessarily about technology, right? We need to understand how we can use this technology to solve certain last mile challenges, right? Technology in itself is nothing, right? It's just a tool. So there's no point obsessing around it. What is it that we can do with it, right? So as you move beyond hype towards reality, we need to keep these basic ideas in mind, that we need to harness technology for solving our problems at scale. That is what we need to do. So from deep tech, satellite imagery, right? Agricultural productivity, telemedicine solutions, healthcare, right? In all of these areas, we can make a significantly positive impact, right? Whether it is grappling with economic slowdown, whether it is increasing productivity, AI can help in a variety of ways, right? So population scale deployment is what we need, right? So for instance, COVID, right? The vaccination platform had a population scale deployment. UPI has a population scale deployment, right? So we need population scale deployment to tackle population scale challenges. And that is the kind of idea that we need to keep in mind, right? and therefore these principles that India has sworn by or India has adopted, those are the kind of principles that the world needs to swear by and adopt when we are building out an ecosystem for artificial intelligence. So these are the 3 articles that I wanted to submit to your consideration today. Keep them in mind while you are preparing for your examinations, right? Please pick up something extremely valuable from these articles, few points here and there, and integrate them into your current affairs diary, syllabus wise, so that when a question gets asked from that syllabus ka point or sub point, then you are able to, quickly get your thoughts together, throw some value addition into that, make your answer, and then move ahead. That is what you should try to take out of these articles, these lectures. Nothing more, nothing less. If there is anything that you would like to ask, please feel free to do that. So otherwise I'll be closing this session. I'll be meeting you all tomorrow with another set of articles with another discussion. So I think this is it. Thank you so much for joining in. All the best and Jai Hind to all of you guys. Take care. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.